thing I would like to see is more technology like 3D printing, maybe with other substrates like metal, so that you could just make things you need instead of buying them. Make an exact freaking replica of the thing that you can't afford to buy. Because if you're not selling it, you're not really disturbing the patent, right? Because the patent is all
True.
about like making money from something. So yeah, like
Hmm.
anarchists should actually be in government, like
Hmm.
more than anybody,
Yeah.
because they're the ones that are actually going to be concerned with doing things the most concise way.
And being concerned with the actual populace of an
Right.
area
Yeah.
rather than just like the bottom line or glory and fame or who knows what. I don't know what people, some people like to get in there because they, like I said, the type of people that it attracts because
Yeah.
they want to boss people around basically. They want to be the big cheese. And I don't want to be that. But it's like, hey, if I can make a difference, then why not? I don't have a political angle. If I were an atheist and I was like head of a church, I wouldn't be like, we're going to shut the doors. I'd be like, hey, let's practice our faith, such as it is, and maybe make some changes that would make everything better, and maybe encourage people to think differently, which is good. And he's looking at it for like half an hour, trying to figure out how to initiate a rinse cycle, and
Yeah.
he can't. And so he's like, okay, well, I'm going to look in the manual then. And it's talking about in the manual, it's talking about all the different cycles and things. And there's like an asterisk next to a couple. And down in the bottom, it's like, oh, in order to access these features, you need the app. And so, like, he's like, okay, well, that's fine. I guess I could download that maybe. But it's like, oh, no, you download the app, right? But you also have to create an account with like a cloud server, and that manages the communication. You don't have local communication. It's not like
And to
Bluetooth.
protect the safety of your dishwasher, you need
Yeah,
two-factor authentication.
yeah. Well, and his complaint was like, well, it's a privacy and security issue. Like this unknown, he doesn't know how secure it is. Oh, now you're giving unfettered network access to this device just to do something that there just ought to be a button for it.
If, like, early on in human societies, where in the village, you'd have the village elders, right?
Yeah.
The ones with all the wisdom and experience, and they would give people guidance, and people would
Mhm.
look to them for direction, and
Or to
you could,
resolve a dispute.
yeah, and you could argue that that was like uh, an early form of government.
Hmm.
And now I look at our government and it's definitely elders, but well, this idea I've had lately about an integrity-based currency of sorts kind of evolved from a few years ago on the show where I don't know if you remember this, but I talked about an idea of smart currency where the coin itself carried a fluctuating value of its own, kind
Hmm.
of detached from the net, as it
Yeah.
were. Like
I
and I think it was kind of randomized or something. So you couldn't really become wealthy because you never know what coin you're going to have or something. And that just sort of was like a precursor to,
Yeah, yeah. And that was a product of our conversation.
yeah, because you know what? This isn't working. There's got to be something else. And so the gears start turning. And then that idea was a little clunky,
Yeah.
um, but then something a little bit more, uh,
We need a bottom up solution. That's really the like grassroots, kind of like the right to repair movement that's a grassroots kind of thing and it's taking hold. Make the maker movement as well. Like these things like just grow and spread and more people get involved and start doing it. And this is a good thing. And we could apply the same kind of process to anything else, to society, to the environment, to stuff like that. It's like, what we don't need to arrest somebody who litters in out in nature. We need to shame them. That's what we need to do. We need to mock them. And that has to be the way so that you don't do it out of fear of some kind of punishment. You don't do it because you don't want somebody to see you doing it,
right.
you know, because like it's gonna get around, you're gonna be viral, and everybody's gonna be hating on you and stuff. Like that's how you encourage responsible behavior.
What if all the existing light poles were modified to be charging stations for drones. And every time a car comes by, a drone deploys and just shines a super bright LED over it until it needs to charge, and just kind of like a relay race. The next drone picks up and follows the car.
LEDs do not work as well. There's two problems. One, they're too dim. Two, they're too bright. If that makes any sense. You can't see. I remember when I was younger driving around when we had the old sodium lights or mercury vapor lights. I can't remember which one it was, but basically the monochromatic kind of pinkish colored lights. You could see really well. I could see pedestrians, you could see kind of off to the sides. You could see really far down the road. And now with these LED ones, it's this cool temperature light. And especially in the rain, I can't even see where the lanes are. And half the time, I can't see what is on the side of the road. Imagine if a fifth of the houses in a neighborhood had a little shop attached to it that was their place of business, like a hairdresser or I don't know, a tire repair place, like a bicycle shop or something, just a little bakery or something like that. And it's just kind of all, so you don't have to drive anywhere. You just walk over there and go to their place of business. Like, and you get to meet other neighbors along the way, which never happens anymore, by the way. People are all shut in and closed off and stuff. And this would open it up. And it would help with commerce. It would help with like just the finances of the community too. Cause like, yeah, it would also help imagine if a significant portion of the population of an area worked from home, like had their place of business on their own land where their house is or whatever. And now they don't have to commute to like Seattle or whatever. That's why I'm so big on like right to repair and stuff, because we need as consumers to encourage manufacturers to make things repairable. Like, I'm not saying they got to give us service manuals or supply parts indefinitely, but like at least build things with the idea that the consumer, the user, could take it apart and do basic stuff, basic things, right?
I mean, if a service manual has been written, why not make it available for purchase even? Like you can make money off of it because somebody put the trouble in to write it. And in fact, like when you don't have the right to repair, you're spending all this money and resource on creating the service manuals so you guys can do the repair. But then you put all that effort into that and you're not making money off of that.
You have all the contractors that are building stuff, and then you have the government, which monopolizes control over that. So, and they work together, they collude and stuff. So for the government, there's no incentive to get better or to even do anything to improve things. And for the contractors, there's not an incentive to do a good job or even suggest improvements or whatever. Because like, well, it's the government. The check's going to roll in. They just said, build a road. We're just going to build it. Like, and that's a problem.
Afterthoughts are like 95% of how the roads are, because roundabouts for one thing. If a roundabout is planned in advance and built properly, I absolutely agree that it's smooth flowing, and if it's logically laid out and has good signage and stuff. But when you just try to cram it into a space just because there was a lot of traffic, guess what? Now there's a lot of traffic and nobody knows what to do.
I'd like to see more tiny houses, honestly. If I were mayor of Tacoma, I would make it a point to remove all restrictions on tiny houses. Make that my thing. I don't want there to be any barrier. People can build tiny houses. We need more of them because housing is a thing, and tiny houses are cheap. They can fit in a small footprint. They could fit in a backyard. I could put one in the backyard at my house, and it's not a particularly big backyard, or in the driveway, which is a particularly big driveway. And I could rent it out. And then now somebody could be just paying me like, okay, as long as you just pay my utility bill, that's rent, and there you go. And no problem. There's one home for somebody. And if more and more people did that, there would not be a housing crisis whatsoever.
You know what's kind of cool here in Germany? There's no power lines, at least not anywhere that I've been.
I think there's above ground high voltage transmission lines, but when it's like last mile stuff is all underground. Yeah.
And so like during storms and stuff, like power outages are very rare. They'd be very localized, like to a neighborhood or something.
I think the only time you'd see an issue with underground stuff is if there was like an earthquake or a flood.
Yeah, we're not on a fault line. I mean, there's rivers and stuff, but
I think underground is a way better way to go, honestly.
yeah, yeah.
It blows my mind that underneath roads, every road doesn't have like a tunnel underneath it. A big tunnel where you can have all kinds of utilities running through it